Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is not Friday, it's Saturday, but it is true crime day regardless. And I have sushi. I'm so excited for this plate. I purchased this at my local grocery store. We have a nice poke type bowl here with some salmon, avocado, there's rice underneath, there's green onions. We've got some seaweed salad here on the side. I've got a spicy tuna roll with some ginger. This is an avocado spring roll and it comes with a sweet chili sauce. So I'm really excited for this. Our true crime video today is going to be a two-part series because there are some really great details involved in this case. A lot of times it's hard to find a background story of the criminal or the killer, but this one provided a really great backstory along with a lot of details that were easier to find than other cases. So I really appreciated that. So we're gonna have a two-part series, like I said. If you love true crime, if you love sushi, if you love food in general, give this video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Are you not subscribed? Let's get started. Okay, so per usual, we are going to taste everything and take a couple of bites of our food before we get started in our story. I think I'm going to start with, I really want to try this avocado spring roll. I think this is so beautiful the way they designed it. You know, the sushi chef behind the counter there at the grocery store. I think they're so talented and they make such beautiful rolls. Inside this has cucumber and carrots and then some lettuce. Very simple, and it just comes with a sweet chili sauce. I've never tried this sauce. I usually just eat it plain, but I'm feeling like some sauce today. It doesn't smell spicy at all. Okay. Ooh, and it's so cold. It's a really hot 85-degree day today, so this is nice and chilled and delicious looking. I have to say, I really don't like the really sweet sauce. That's okay. I tried it. This is really refreshing and tasty on its own. Seaweed salad. That's good. I think I'm gonna put some soy sauce on the poke part. It just tastes really fresh. How are you guys doing today? I hope everybody's having an awesome day. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. I'm gonna switch to a spoon and make my life a little bit easier. I'll be right back. Okay, I think this is gonna be a lot better. Yes, now I can have the rice. This is gonna be so good. Very, very good. Yum-o. Who used to say that all the time? Yum-o. Rachel Ray. Rachel Ray. You know, I learned how to cook from Rachel Ray when I was younger. It was like early 2000s, I think, but she taught me almost everything I know. Ginger. These are the spicy tuna. I definitely need wasabi for my spicy tuna. That's a lot of wasabi, but I just love it. Ooh. Hold on. Oh. I'm okay. If you're ever congested, have a little wasabi. This is really good. Let's get started on our story, you guys. Where's my water? Have you guys seen my water? Oh my gosh. It's way over there. Well, I can't reach it, and I'm not about to move my whole setup and do all that, so I'll just have water after I eat. Today's story is about the American murderer, Gary Heidnik. He kidnapped, tortured, raped 6 women and held them captive in his basement in Philadelphia. This was such an intriguing story. This guy has quite the background. We're going to talk a little bit about that before we get into the actual crime that was committed. Gary was born November 22nd of 1943 in East Lake, Ohio, and he grew up in the suburb of Cleveland. He had a younger brother, and his parents divorced in 1946 when Gary was only 3 years old. After the divorce, Gary lived with his mom, and that lasted for about 4 years, and then he and his brother moved in with Dad and his dad's new wife. Gary would later describe his relationship with his father, and he stated that it was emotionally abusive. He had a bedwetting problem. He had it for many, many years, and this bedwetting would infuriate his father. Gary's dad would take his wet bed sheets and he would hang it outside of his window for all the neighbors to see. Maybe he was thinking that if he was embarrassed, he'd stop doing it, right? And Gary's father later denied any type of abuse that happened in the home. Now at school, Gary didn't socialize with the other students whatsoever. He wouldn't even make eye contact with them. He was often teased by his oddly shaped head. And he would just tell the kids that it was the result of falling out of a tree when he was younger. Although Gary was socially distant from the other students, he performed quite well academically. He was even tested, and it showed that he had an IQ of 148. In case you're unaware, Einstein had an IQ of 160. Isaac Newton had an IQ of about 190. So Gary's testing to be quite intelligent. I don't know if the spicy tuna is better or this poke is better. With the encouragement of his father, 14-year-old Gary enrolled in the Stanton Military Academy in Stanton, Virginia. And he did quite well. And this was a highly regarded, private, male-only military school in which many notable political and military leaders attended. This wasn't just, you're a bad kid and you're going to military school. No. Although he did well there, Gary dropped out after 2 years before graduating, and he went back to regular high school. He did not complete high school. Shortly after he went back there, he dropped out at 17, and he joined the U.S. Army. He served in the Army for a total of 13 months, and during his basic training, his drill sergeant rated him as excellent. He was transferred to Texas and he did some medic training, and then he was transferred to Germany. He applied for several specialist positions, but he was denied all of them. Gary continued his career in the Army until one day he started to feel very ill. In 1962, it was reported that he started to complain of severe headaches, dizziness, a feeling of nausea, and even blurred vision. A hospital neurologist ended up diagnosing Gary with gastroenteritis, which, if you don't know, is inflammation of the stomach and the small intestines. But he was also diagnosed with mental illness. He was prescribed an antipsychotic, and then he was sent to a hospital in Philadelphia where he was officially diagnosed with this specific personality disorder. I'll display it here. And he was dishonorably discharged from the U.S. Army. The sesame oil on this is so good. I feel like the sesame seeds and the sesame oil really make that like Asian flair, you know? So Gary's now in Philadelphia, and shortly after his discharge, he became an LPN, a licensed practical nurse, and he was working at a veterans hospital, which he was eventually fired from because of poor attendance and being rude to patients. So for the next 15 years, Gary spent his time in and out of psychiatric hospitals, and he attempted suicide 13 times. In 1970, his mom died. She was an alcoholic and she was suffering from bone cancer, and she ended up committing suicide. She drank some chemicals, a poisonous concoction, and that's how she died. The family just has a history of mental illness and being suicidal. But Gary's a smart guy, right? In 1971, he incorporated his own church, and he started off with a $1,500 investment, and it grew from there. After about 4 years, he had about $500,000 in the account. Here's the kicker. Most of his church members were mentally handicapped people that he could easily take advantage of, and who were dedicated to giving the church money. Over the next 10 years, the church really thrived and became very, very wealthy. So here's where things start to get really crazy. Are you ready for this? Do you have your snack? Do you have your drink? Gary had a girlfriend named Anjanette Davidson. She was mentally disabled, and although she could live on her own, it's reported that she had an IQ of only 48. So she was living in the slums of Philadelphia, but she was an easy target. She was very poor. She had a disability. Gary saw this as an opportunity. Anjanette then became pregnant, and Gary had her on a very strict eating regimen. She only gained 5 pounds by the time that she was 8 months pregnant. So Anjanette's older sister came to pick her up and take her away from Gary when she was 8 months pregnant, and that's when they found out that he wasn't allowing her to have proper medical care. But they also found that she had a fibroid tumor that wouldn't allow her to give birth naturally, and so she got a C-section and she had a baby girl, but the baby was immediately put into foster care because she wasn't fit to take care of a baby. Just a few weeks later, Gary and Anjanette drove to a mental facility where people who were mentally disabled were living, like an assisted living place, so they were well taken care of. And Anjanette's sister, Alberta, lived there. Now, Alberta had an IQ of only 30, so she had the mental capacity of a 5-year-old, although she wasn't able to read or write. So Gary signed her out for visitation and promised that he would bring her back the very next morning at the latest. Well, he didn't. The facility had to get a court order demanding that Gary bring Alberta back home. It was 10 days later before they obtained this court order, and they were able to go to Gary's house. And it was a female facility worker who knocked on Gary's door and showed him the court order and demanded that he hand over Alberta. Gary denied that she was there. He opened up the door and said, "You can search my house. She's not here. I sent her with a bus ticket back to your facility." The facility worker walks in Gary's house. She goes through all the bedrooms. She's looking for Alberta. She doesn't find her, so she leaves. The very next day, the facility worker goes back to Gary's apartment, and this time she brings a police officer. And they find Alberta. They found her in Gary's basement in a storage room, and she was shivering and terrified. And as soon as she saw the facility worker, she ran to her, grabbed her, hugged her, was squeezing her tight. It was a very emotional display. They did an examination on her and they found that Gary had raped her and sodomized her, and they found sperm in her throat and also gonorrhea in her throat. So she contracted gonorrhea from this man. He was charged with kidnapping, rape, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. You would think that he got put away for life, right? Wrong. The sentence was overturned on appeal. Gary spent 3 years of his incarceration in mental institutions prior to being released in 1983. Oh, isn't that so frustrating when people like that are set free and they're able to strike again? I'm gonna get cleaned up and we're gonna wrap up this part 1. So it's 1983 and Gary is free. He starts writing letters to a woman in the Philippines named Betty, and this goes on for about 2 years. Then he proposes to her and she comes to the United States and they get married. So now it's 1985, but this is a very short-lived marriage. And that is because Betty accuses Gary for abuse, for repeated rape and assault. And not only did he treat her badly repeatedly, but he would also force her to watch while he had sex with other women. In Philadelphia, there was a very strong Filipino community, and due to their help, Betty was able to flee from Gary. She went back to her own country and she was pregnant. Gary didn't know this at the time. But in 1986, she was requesting child support, and this infuriated Gary. He wanted children, he wanted a family, but Betty got away. So now Betty's gone and it's the following year, 1987, and Gary decides that he needs to find a new victim. He knew this prostitute, Josefina Rivera, and she agreed to sleep with him. And so she went back to his place, they had intercourse, and when she was getting dressed, he grabbed her from behind in the back of her neck. He was telling her that he wasn't going to hurt her. She's freaking out. He takes handcuffs and he binds her by her wrists, he binds her ankles, and he takes her downstairs into the basement and tries to throw her in this pit that he made. Josefina is fighting for her life and she has asthma, and when she's kicking around there's a bunch of dirt flying everywhere, so she's saying she can't breathe. So he has a stick and he's just beating her with it repeatedly until she goes into this hole. Oh, things start to get really dark. But we are going to stop right here. This is going to be the end of part 1. Next week, we're going to continue part 2, and I'm going to include more photos of the crime scene and of other women that are going to be coming into the story. I'm also going to include a link to a very insightful interview that one of these survivors did. It was crazy to watch that. What is to come is just chilling, you guys. This guy had some real problems, and these women that end up together, the things that happen, I just can't wait to share part 2 with you. So I hope everybody comes back next week. But that is the end of today's video. Thank you guys so much for being here with me, and I will see you guys in part 2. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye.